Right there. Oop, nope.
Oh,
A
well,
little. Yeah. Perfect. Yep.
cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, this
That
is
right there. Yep.
the lighting in here. I've just done WTA Weekly, and the lighting was so I've been trying to fix
Because
it
if
for
it's like,
this.
yeah, no, this is perfect here where it's like just on one side. Um,
Yeah.
but yes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the technical aspects of a podcast where we talk about lighting and how you can see us. Hello.
I mean, I'm grateful that we can hear you, Anastasia, because before we started recording, there was technical speak about you.
Exactly. It's been a technical morning, afternoon, wherever. Yeah, it's afternoon here. But yes, we've had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we're finally here and ready to record. It's a blizzard outside in New York. So after coming back from Florida, that's just exactly what I wanted, a blizzard.
Yeah,
Man, no.
that does not sound fun, but at least you got some sun, some time in mini ice before you came back to
Yes.
enjoy New York winter, which apparently
It's just ongoing. It never
how
stops. This is just our
how
year of winter.
how are you both on the same coast? Like this is just mind-boggling the size of the US that you can have two cities of
Yep. It's
such different
just
weather.
one up north and one down south, and
Mhm.
that's just how it works. But welcome everyone to this episode of Ground Pass. For this episode, we're going to talk about how February is has to be the best tennis month of the year, and we'll talk about why. We will also talk about my time in Delray Beach, how Jessica Pegula is a winner in Dubai, and of course, can anyone stop Carlos Alcaraz? That is all the topics we're going to try and hit today in a very relatively short amount of time because we can't make this episode too long. Nick, let's jump right into it, I think, and start with Delray Beach. Did you get to watch any of the tennis that was happening in Delray Beach, or were you just following me vicariously through social media?
Mostly following you vicariously through social media. I did turn on a couple matches. I watched the semi-final yesterday where Sebi Corda beat, which was exciting to see Sebi Corda well. I turned on a couple of Coleman Wong matches because we love. I've been mainly focused on Dubai, unsurprisingly, a little bit of Doha, but also like Del Rey's timelines, like generally like US timelines. I could only really watch half of it, so any night session matches I had
Mm-hmm.
no hope of keeping up with. So I watched more of Del Rey than Rio, though. From I will get into your experience because I have been living vicariously through that. The main stadium was kind of the first thing I see, like kind of it caught my eye, basically, for Delray because I was like, whoa, that's an interesting, ambitious stadium size for a 250, and the way it sort of sticks out is quite impressive. It does look like it's trying to.
Yeah, it is a pretty big stadium. I love that you pointed that out for 250 because actually it is so big. There is a section of it that they've kind of covered with like a nylon cloth kind of thing. It's the side of it that says DB on it. Those are like, I mean, those are a significant amount of seats that are just covered because this stadium is pretty big. Like it's not US Open big. We're not talking Arthur Ashe here, but it kind of is the size of even almost bigger than Stadium 17, which is the third largest court on at the US Open. So it's pretty no, it's actually the fourth, sorry. Stadium 17 is the fourth largest court at the US Open. So it's pretty big. Like it is pretty big for 250 and then they downsize quite dramatically. So you've got the center court that's massive and then the second court is court 1 and it's like tiny. So you kind of like downsize pretty quickly to a 250 size. I thought it was really interesting, Del Rey, because on TV, I think it just looks like a regular tournament. I think if you're looking at Del Rey on TV, it doesn't have the sort of vistas that you would get in a tennis paradise kind of vibe like Indian Wells, where you see the mountains, you see the sunset, you see all of that stuff. On TV, sometimes Delray can just feel so regular. And that's almost why I wanted to make my video. By the time you're listening to this, which will be, this episode will be out on Monday, I'm going to post like some videos from Delray. And it is quite remarkable how tennis paradisey it is. Like, you have the beach right there. Everyone is in this sort of like small town surfer vibe. And it's just like a very sort of intimate, tropical esque tournament that I really appreciated this time. And I think it was because coming from the contrast of Dallas, which was indoors and dark and, you know, it was a great tournament, but you could totally tell you were indoors because every time you went outside, you were like, oh, there is sun. So contrasting that to then going to Delray, it was almost like a breath of fresh air. You could smell the sea and the breeze. It was very windy, so I'm sure the tennis players didn't quite love it, but it definitely had that vibe of a tennis paradise.
That's interesting, and it is a seaside tennis paradise, which is very different because I don't think there's many tournaments by the sea, and certainly the tournaments that could claim that. Like Miami's now too far inland, probably could at one point, but not now.
Mm-hmm.
And Indian Wells is in the middle of the desert, so yeah, if you want a beach holiday and that's more your vibe, Delray's perfect. Um, and I think
Yeah.
I didn't know too much about Delray before you went this year, really, as a place. So it was interesting seeing that this is kind of the vibe that it's. And yeah, I think for those who maybe want to go to Indian Wells but can't afford it, or it's the wrong coast, or just the wrong time of year, Delray is going to be like backup option for you if you want to do it. Same with Miami, actually. If anything, Delray's probably going to give you what Miami on paper you would think gives you, and that's nothing to take away from the actual
Yeah.
experience you get of going to Miami, but maybe it's not what you would expect from kind of. It's probably a little bit different. And yet again, they keep getting good players because it's perfect warm up for the Sunshine Double, probably even more so than Dallas being an indoor tournament. This is like closer to the conditions that these top male players are going to want to see, and especially the American a head start. Yeah, I think if you went, you were very sore. The players you're gonna go see, and I've absolutely like how these matches have worked out. There's been some really good ones this week, and there's a really good final to look forward to. But I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, if I was living on the east coast of the US, Delray would be one I would seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with this cold weather. It's like the perfect holiday break. But jumping into the players, like you said, the draw was absolutely stacked. I think we talked about this during the last episode, how many top players were in this draw. And, you know, seeing them all there in person, it was kind of interesting. Every match that happened was a bit of, it felt like a 500, even 1,000 sometimes, but maybe just like for one tour. But all the top Americans were there. Then you had Casper Ruud as well, Valentin Vachereau. It felt like very much bigger than it was. And I think the crowd really loved that, seeing all these top players right there in their backyard. And I love the point you made about how Delray is a better sort of prep to maybe go into Indian Wells and then Miami Open, because even the players said that. Because one of the questions that Casper Ruud was asked was like, why come to Delray versus maybe even going to Doha and Dubai? And his main reasoning, he said, was he felt it was just better for him to prep for Indian Wells. So what he's doing is he's doing Delray, then Acapulco, and then going to Indian Wells and then Miami. He just thought it was better prep. And that was what a lot of the players echoed there. For the Americans, I think for them it was more sort of a way to have a break from the tour, but also play a tournament, because the majority of them actually live in the Delray Beach, Boca Raton area. Of like, a lot of them were just like, we just drove with our own cars and whatever, which for them, they don't get that many times of the year. Even when they play at the US Open or they play in Indian Wells or anything, they have to rely on, tournament transport. They are staying in hotels. Delray Beach, for a lot of the Americans, it's actually a home tournament where they can like just pop over to the site, and it's not too bad. So I think Delray has become a very popular destination for players, and I think they're going to keep getting draws like this. But Nick, I want to ask you about this question that came up during the Delray Beach tournament that I hadn't actually clocked really. But Amy Lundy, who is a journalist, friend of the pod, she was at the tournament and she was asking the players about these rumors about the 250 tournaments being reduced and being replaced by either 500s or just, you know, larger tournaments, basically. And a lot of the players had very interesting things to say, which I will put clips of in here now.
I mean, for me, I think yeah, I would have to hear more, like a more detailed plan of what what they're trying to do. But to for me, I'm in favor of shortening the calendar in general. If we're gonna replace small tournaments with other tournaments, then I don't really get it, I guess. But if we're gonna try to condense the season into a more like easy to understand for fans product where we play slightly less, and I think at the same time it can help grow the sport as well because there's just less going on. It's easier to follow as a fan. Then I'd be supportive of that. But um, you know, making less 250s to replace it with something else, removing opportunities for lower ranked players to play the 250s, I'd have to say that that's not really helping anybody.
Yeah, I mean, personally, quite sad to see that be a plan. Um, just from my personal point of view, like you said, I've built a lot of confidence and ranking on my success at 250s, and I think other players have as well. I mean, if you look at Bublik, the last 52 weeks, he won a bunch of tournaments, and I remember when I was younger watching like Dominic Thiem become a top player. He had kind of similar run that I was able to do one summer and win like back-to-back 250s on the clay. And really, I mean, winning a tournament, whether it's 1,000 or 250, is the best feeling in the world. And just lifting a trophy, knowing that out of the 32 players that showed up here, I was the best, and I ended up winning it. So ultimately, I guess it's a business decision, kind of economic decision, if I had to guess. I mean, I'm not sure of all the details. I know it's been in the talks, but you have some of the most historical events be 250s on the calendar, and I'm especially referring to the ones close to where I live, which is Stockholm and Båstad, which legends like Björn Borg, Rafa, Roger have all showed up there and played, and there are several other 250s that have hosted great names. I hope some of them, or at least some of the most historic ones, can stay, but ultimately it's a business decision, and with the 10th Masters 1000 incoming, and they've tried to make the playing field bigger there with increasing the draw. So ultimately, if more or less players can live off tennis, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I get your point saying that fewer people will have the chance to live off of it. But on that note, I think they've done a pretty good job at the challengers, increasing the prize money a little, the points a little. They have all the challengers have hospitality now. They didn't used to when I was playing challengers, which is only a few years ago. So they're trying to restructure, and for the 250s and the ones that won't be here anymore, it's super sad, and I feel horrible for them. But I mean, it is a constant kind of analyzation of business side of tennis, and I guess that's kind of why they go this way.
So I think for Taylor Fritz, his issue is more sort of like if you're just going to be taking away these to replace them with larger tournaments, it doesn't really make sense because I believe that the idea of taking away the 250s is to sort of make the schedule more manageable. And for him, it was like if you're just taking them away to replace with different tournaments, then it's not really doing what you want it to. And for Casper Ruud, he was sort of like he built his career on these 250s. Like he won a bunch of 250s and built his career and ranking at the 250 level. So it would be a shame for other players not to have that opportunity, but also for the local community of these areas where the 250s live to not have pro level tennis in their where top players can come play.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea on multiple. I can see where you're kind of coming from it, because 250s are the hardest to market from a global TV audience perspective, because you don't get top players playing them very often. They are the lower budget events kind of on the tour, but because you need 250s to make it a genuine world, so that in that feeling that come to every country. So, you know, if it's like 500 level and up, you're massively reduced as a global brand, unless you're going to try and add more countries to that 500s roster. You also have a problem where you suddenly have a massive jump, unless you're going to create a Challenger 250 level, because there's already a Challenger 175 level, so it makes sense to have a Challenger 250 kind of thing and just turn all 250s into Challengers, basically. But unless you're going to do that, now you've got a massive discrepancy between the main tour, the point you get on the main tour, the points and money you can get on the main tour, and the Challenger Tour. And basically that's just going to make it harder for players to break through and kind of create this floor that nobody really drops out of unless they get injured or retire. And then they're like, oh, okay, so we can welcome new people in now. And that's half the fun of tennis, is giving new people the opportunity to break in. And it will only be at big tournaments that they can do that. Whereas often to qualify for these tournaments, they have to grind their way onto the 250 level and be successful there, as Casper Ruud did. So it's taking away opportunities from players. It's taking opportunities away from fans as well, as you said. Like, there's 250s are a great way for countries to kind of get their foot in the door to host tennis tournaments, and to create a ladder and create something exciting to get to, and bring more opportunities to bring pro tennis close to fans, and not put it like just this core group. You know, I've been wondering if tennis is moving into the same direction as F1, where they're trying to create a global calendar and like a set of events that everyone goes to. And that's exciting to try and sell as a product globally, but you've got to have the infrastructure to feed that, to make sure, the sports, otherwise player development suffer, and fan access is going to suffer. So if you're going to get rid of 250s, if the ATP is going to do that, and the WTA seems to already be moving in that direction with some of the rules they've put in, then you have to I would really hope they've got a solid plan to underpin that as an alternative, because just replacing it with 500s isn't going to cut it. Like, it's just going to create actually more schedule pressure, because 500s, you have to play a certain amount on different amount. It becomes all about selling this. That is not the whole story of tennis. So I'm not saying don't do it, but you have to. But it's going to be a very difficult idea to get right. So approach with caution. I would say try to avoid it if you possibly can. I think there's a misunderstanding of what's good about the tennis product you're trying. And if you're only interested in big events, then that could ultimately backfire.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with these talks and about getting rid of the 250s. And I hope not, because towns and places like Delray really appreciate the tennis, and it would be nice to keep it in smaller venues like that. One last thing I wanted to mention about Delray, because we keep talking about the one and only Coleman Wong, and we've mentioned him a few times on the podcast, and this was the first time I got to not watch him in person. I've watched him in person before, but to interview him, and it was just incredible. He's such a lovely kid, and just so happy to represent Hong Kong and prove that pro tennis players can come from a small place like Hong Kong. It's just like, it was so lovely interviewing him. I'm going to put a clip of that interview in here now.
I'm really a tennis guy. I really watch a lot of tennis, and I always try to be, I really like to eat actually, and I'm really happy I'm from Hong Kong, because Hong Kong have a lot of good food, and in Hong Kong you have like all sorts. You have the international foods, and also everyone should come over and check it out. And obviously it's a bit far from the US, but there's direct flight from LA, so it's not so bad. So I think being from Hong Kong, I want to be there's not many, to be honest, not many courts because it's a small place. So I hope there will be more and more courts for me to practice. And although all the players coming up, I think I want them to believe that, we often think that we're not as good as all the other players. But yeah, because I hear a lot from the juniors and all the people from Hong Kong. But even when I was starting, I have a lot of doubts because people start saying about, it's not possible, or like, don't go crazy, and just be like, just for fun, just play tennis for fun. And then I take it in a different way. It's like a motivation for me to keep going forward. And my goal always from the start is always number one. So I think it's a little different than other juniors or other players from Hong Kong. So I hope they can believe as well.
Check out our YouTube, subscribe, please, while you're there. And what I'll be doing is posting a lot of these interviews, clips of these interviews that I have when I'm on site, because it's nice to hear directly from the players about a lot of things. And what I will do is just make sort of like a compilation of player interviews and put them up on our YouTube. So the Delray final is going to be today as we record, if it hasn't started already, but it's starting this afternoon. It is between Sebi Korda and Tommy Paul. So we get another American final at an American tournament after Dallas. Really great for American tennis, really great to see them get to the finals of these events, because last year, for example, that was the whole thing where it's like the Americans were out before the finals of these American events. So it's nice to see them get there. And yeah, whoever wins, it's a win-win, especially for the local fans who will be cheering along, including, I don't know if you've seen these guys, Nick, but the founding fathers, who, if you don't know the story behind the founding fathers, definitely follow us on Instagram and YouTube, because I posted about them there. They are fans of Tommy Paul. They met him during Davis Cup last year, and Tommy Paul wasn't playing Davis Cup, so he saw them in the crowd. They're dressed like the founding fathers, the American founding fathers, so they're dressed in this sort of like old, 17th century, whatever, military garb. And they were just in the crowd cheering. So Tommy Paul went and sat with them and was cheering along with them during Davis Cup. And he wasn't sure if they were going to show up to Delray for this tournament, but they sure did, and have cheered him on through all of his matches. They're high school students, and luckily Tommy Paul only got night matches, because they were like, we're gonna skip school even if we have to come watch him play during the day. So they were willing to skip school. It's really nice of the tournament to provide them with tickets after the first day they were there, so that they could just keep coming and cheering Tommy Paul on. So they're definitely going to be there for the finals. I'm excited to see what they do.
They've been one of the highlights of the tournament. I'm glad the tournament's leaning into it as well, and they because it's good marketing for them as well. It's nice to have a bit of fun with tennis. It's people, can just have fun with it and be a bit silly, but also support their player. And Tommy Paul's always been a man of the people, because he's got such great interactions with his fans. There was that kid. Was that kid who was like a big Tommy Paul fan around?
Yeah,
it was at US Open. Like, that was one of the big American.
yes.
He's got a great history with just being great with the fans and being really open to talking to them and welcoming them in. And I think it's great news that he's in a final again, because he's had a rough time coming back from injury. This is probably the best run he's had since Rome last year. So I'm very happy to see him kind of on the resurgence. And the same with Sebi Korda, who seems to be a bit rejuvenated at the moment. Ryan Harrison, who is a former doubles player and also a regular commentator for the ATP and also Sky Sports now. So that's going to be interesting to see if he's and the commitment there. And it does seem to at least make a difference with that. So two researchers on the tour. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that final. It's going to be a feel good, whichever way that goes. I can probably guarantee to you that there's going to be probably a little bit louder crowd support for Tommy Paul, if only because of the founding fathers.
Exactly. So that's, Delray. Highly recommend this tournament. If you have never heard of it, if you were thinking about it, definitely check it out next year for sure. Now on to Dubai. When we talked during the last episode, we had some withdrawals. And Nick, safe to say they just kept on coming. Like, just so many withdrawals or retirements this tournament. And it's been funny. It's really interesting because even with all of the withdrawals, all of the retirements, we still had 4 top 10 players in the semifinals at this tournament. So for me, we'll talk about the withdrawals and all of that in a bit, but it just goes to show the depth of the WTA, where even with all of the withdrawals, we had 4 top 10 players in the semifinals. In the quarterfinals, we had Alex Eala and Mira Andreeva as well. So, even with all of that, the WTA can still put on a very great event.
Yeah, I don't think it was that. I don't think the withdrawals had that big an impact, to be honest, because we still got a lot of the top players showing up and they delivered. And that's the thing. Yes, some didn't go or some were compromised, but the ones that weren't still showed up and still performed well and delivered great tennis. And what tennis we got? There were a couple of real bangers that happened towards Anastasia beating Andreeva. That was quite a dramatic. With that, I think in that match, and I think Andreeva had a dramatic match just before that as well. But yeah, that match was pretty good. And then the Svitolina Coco Gauff match in the semi-finals was just fun. That was the closest to a stalemate, a 50-50 match I think you'll ever see. Because you literally had no idea who was going to win the next point. You didn't even know who was going to win a rally between the two of them a lot of the time, because they were just so on it, and so they're both very strong athletes and defenders, but also have great weapons to turn. And that made a big impact. So you literally had no idea which way this was going, who was going to take the momentum, and it was literally who could take the opportunity near the end that secured it. Made watching. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that. So it's not just the top players showing up, but also the quality. And that's what made Dubai so good. And yeah, I think the withdrawals, we make a lot of how many there were, and there were a few. But when you think, most of it of players with pre-existing issues that scheduling, because if players are going to withdraw from 1,000, really the prime candidates are going to be Doha, Dubai, these kind of tournaments that are in a part of the season that doesn't really work for players because it's not building up to anything big, or it's not providing you anything big. Like Sunshine Doubles are big, and it's got quite a lot of, and it's got like a lot of prestige behind it, and a lot of Madrid and Rome are important warm-ups for clay for the French Open. Same for Canada and Cincinnati, although you do see players skipping Canada now and again because of how close it is to Wimbledon. But Cincinnati is definitely a great warm-up, but you very rarely see players skipping that. So it's really the Middle East swing and the Asian swing that suffer, because the players don't need to be there, other than they don't want to lose too many ranking points from having to. What you've kind of going is like, this is if you're going to skip a 1,000, this is going to be one of them, because you want to be fresh for the Sunshine Double, and it doesn't really benefit you to be that much to be, especially. There are exceptions. Obviously, Mira Andreeva won the double last year, but I think that's where I would lay that date. Let's not panic too quickly about it. Yes, there are legitimate questions about scheduling and how that impacts players, and I think this ties into that. But if you, apart from Sabalenka and Swiatek, who were very open about the fact that this was kind of scheduling or kind of needing the recovery time, and this was kind of in the wrong. A lot of these other withdrawals were kind of expected. Like 3 of the 4 Doha semi-finalists pulled out. That was such a tight turnaround. They didn't need the extra points. And then, so that comes into scheduling as well. And then the others were like, Cocciaretto was playing so hard, I'm not surprised she got a thigh injury. Hailey Baptiste was working pretty hard. I'm not surprised that she got into herself in that situation. Rebecca has played a lot of tennis. I think she was starting to hit her limit. That we saw Barbora Krejcikova and Marketa Vondrousova, Zheng Qinwen, we know they've all had injury problems. So I think this all ties into, there's a certain level of expectation of some of these players. Osaka and Keys, we knew have been carrying stuff. So I'm not massively worried, because there's a good explanation. It does bring up a scheduling, but I don't think we should panic too much that, all these players there, and we still got great tennis. And that was a longer monologue than I was planning.
Yeah. And we might as well just jump into this story that came out, because I think it's really interesting with the scheduling part of this story. And the WTA has formed a new committee. It's called the Tour Architecture Council, which, by the way, will be led by Jessica Pegula. We'll talk about her in a bit. But yeah, like, it looks like they are going to start looking at the way the schedule is structured to maybe help prevent things like this. Because you're right, like, coming right off of a Grand Slam in Australia, then going into back to back 1,000 level events, which are the events that have the most points, a bit of history. These two tournaments were not always back to back 1,000s. They were a 1,000 and a 500 event that alternated who would be the 1,000 and who would be the 500 every single year. So maybe back then it wasn't too much of sort of an issue with missing them, because that's 1,000 points that you're going to lose, or you'll get a 0 for example, if you don't attend. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that the WTA is finally looking at this, or at least they have announced that they're going to be looking into stuff like this. And I think, of course, Jessica Pegula, who was on the player council and just seems to be the most sort of outspoken slash very informed about these things within the WTA tour, especially, is going to be the one leading this committee. Once it was announced that she was the one, I kind of was like, oh, okay, this is serious. Like, they're going to take this scheduling thing seriously because she's involved in it. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes from basically the forming of this committee based on what happened this year.
Yeah. And it's really good of the WTA to look for player input on the schedule, because ultimately the schedule needs to be right for players and what they can produce. Because ultimately, everyone wants the same thing, which is the top players able to, at the best level, as regularly as possible. The fans want it because it's great to watch. The tournaments want it because it's great to sell. And the players because that is their best opportunity to advance their careers. So it's in everyone's interest to find some kind of compromise. Players playing a tight schedule, and missing things and avoiding versus building something that is sustainable for the long term. So I'm very optimistic about this, especially, as you say, with Jessica Pegula running it, because Pegula is actually one of those players who plays a lot. Like, she is one of those ones who has a packed schedule herself and actually seems to want more matches, as many as possible. Like, that's the thing. We always paint players in terms of what they want, but actually some players want a lighter schedule because that's what they can deal with best, and some players like Jessica Pegula want the reps, as many as possible, because that what helps keeps them. So I think Pegula is someone who will be able to find that balance of what's right for players and what's right for tournaments, and like, she's a very savvy business. So I'm interested to see how she steers it and what she recommends and what this group recommends in there. I think it's about time that, I think if we get a schedule that fundamentally the players are happy with, I'm not going to complain about it. So yeah, I'm very interested.
Yeah. And speaking of Miss Consistency herself, Jessica Pegula, she won the tournament in Dubai. Finally, she wins a tournament, because you might not know this, but she has gotten to the semifinals of every single event she's played since the US Open. Like, that is the definition of consistency in the tennis dictionary, is Jessica Pegula. And it's really nice to see that all of her hard work is finally paying off, and she won the title in Dubai, because she's one of those players who, I think, on paper, you look at her and you don't really immediately see any sort of flashiness. You don't see any sort of like, oh, she hits the ball super, super duper hard, or she serves really hard, or she's super tall, or anything. She just seems like the most regular player, but she works so hard on her craft and developing her craft and becoming a better tennis player, that it's nice to see that work that she puts in is actually coming to fruition, and she now has a title to back up all of these great results that she's had. You know, she's always in the top 10. She's always getting to the later stages of tournaments. And, you know, I think this is Nick, her fourth 1000 level title, is it?
Yes, it is. And it's the first one she's won outside. Big result.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just really nice to see because, again, Jessica Pegula isn't someone that I think people look at and they think top player, even though she is. Like, she's a top player. And having to juggle, you know, now she has a podcast and, like, she's doing all this stuff. She was on the player council. Now she's going to be on this architecture council. So doing all of those things to help improve the sport of tennis and also winning tournaments and also being in the top 10. I really do think Jessica Pegula needs to get a lot more recognition than she does, because I think she's overlooked so much for the more sort of flashy, younger players, because, you know, she's in her 30s now and she actually did not win a title till she turned 28. So she's definitely a late bloomer, but I love that sort of inspiration for people, because sometimes it doesn't always have to happen when you're 18. You know, sometimes it takes time.
Yeah, she turns 32 on Tuesday. So happy birthday, Jessica Pegula, when this comes out. And you're spot on with Jess. You're right, she's not the most flashy player, but it's interesting. I've seen her at Wimbledon a couple of times now, and don't get me wrong, the TV does not do her justice. She cracks that ball. Like, she can really hit the ball. And she's so great at redirecting pace and injecting her own. And I thought, I thought exactly this, watching her win that final against Alina Svitolina. Pegula won that match because she saw her opportunities and took control of the points. And she used her weapons to do that. She was hitting a lot of winners. She was serving really well. And she was maximizing her opportunities. And even the semi-final against Amanda, she basically saw a chance and she took it and she turned the match. And didn't get a great start. Amanda won 7 of the first 8 games. Getting herself in this position is because she works for it and she sees the opportunities, and she takes them well. And she's and when she's beaten top players, that's exactly what she's done. She's a proactive player. It's just that, she's just not flashy, but she's good. She is the kind of player that I would say, watch her to anyone learning tennis, because you can't copy a Swiatek forehand or a Carlos Alcaraz drop shot or a Roger Federer backhand. But I can guarantee to you, and I definitely don't recommend you copying anything from Daniel Medvedev, because only he... But Gula, she does everything really, really well. And I would say that she's someone that I would always recommend a newbie to watch and get an idea for a foundation, especially since she's so strong and she can. So, some Jessica Pegula appreciation. I am always, and I think we should be quicker to give, especially since I think, she's in that conversation of if she steps up, she's winning big titles. And I think she's proving that more and more. Whilst she's still able to, because 32 isn't old for humans, it's getting on for an athlete. So I'm hoping to have her around for...
Agreed. Last thing I wanted to talk about in Dubai before we move on is that Alex Eala continues to be so good for tennis. This became sort of a topic of conversation, and I saw that a lot of the players who were in the tournament were asked about Alex Eala, because it's no secret, maybe if you've never watched Dubai before, you might not know this, but sometimes when you watch Dubai, it's not exactly a super packed tournament. You don't get crowds and crowds of people attending the tournament. But Alex Eala did. She filled every single match she played. She is a star in her country, and people travel to see her. Or if they live in the country that she's playing in, they come and they see her. And a lot of the players were asked, and especially Coco Gauff, who won her match against Alex Eala, was asked about the crowd and what that felt like. She did reference, she talked about Roland Garros, I think, when she was playing against, I think it was Louis Boisson. And she kind of was like, I just pretend they're saying my name when they yell for the opponent. But in her press conference, she just expressed how happy she was that all these new people are coming into the sport, and it's so great for tennis, because I think a lot of Alex Ayala fans get a bad rap because they, people say, or like more established fans, I guess, and if you can't see me, I have quotation marks in all of this, because they all are like, oh, they don't understand the etiquette, and they're not cheering the right way, which, if you know me, those are like my triggers. The moment you're like, they're not cheering the right way, or they don't understand the etiquette, gets me crazy. But no, I just think they're so great for the sport. They're also excited to learn about the sport. And isn't that what we want? So I just wanted to mention that, because it was so heartwarming to see a packed Dubai stadium of just people cheering for tennis, because that's what they were doing.
Yeah, we want it and people outwardly enjoying it and getting into a match. And often the atmosphere is what makes these great matches. The Alcaraz Sinner match last year would not have been the same without the crowd getting involved and getting excited. And when it's not that level of kind of tennis, then the crowd getting involved kind of heightens the tension. Can we just say, like, not cheering the right way? That basically means not cheering the English way, or not cheering the posh American way. Like, if you're looking at, look at the 3 Grand Slams that aren't Wimbledon. You've got the Aussies, who are incredibly boisterous, with, they're the ones who are doing the stupid Sue thing. They're the ones who will shout Aussie, Aussie, oi, 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 and they're always pretty boisterous, or they have a reputation of being there. The French crowd make everything about themselves with their crowd trumpets, the kind of the ole response. And then the American fans just treat everything like a big loud baseball game, like at the US Open they do anyway. Maybe not so much Indian Wells. So there's that. Then, let's talk about the Ukrainians. Make so much noise when they come and support their players. I've been in the middle of that. I watched a few years ago at Wimbledon, Elina Svitolina against Magda Linette. And boy, was it loud, because you had a contingent of Polish fans and a contingent of Ukrainian fans. And that just made that match so much more fun, because they were both being so loud. And the Polish fans, especially when Iga's playing, are very loud. And then you've got the Chinese fans for Sung Chin-wen. No, this is not just about Alex Ayala fans. Like, no fans know the etiquette unless you have been watching tennis for a very, very long time, and that was how the etiquette was. Do I prefer a chiller vibe in life? Yes. Do I need a chiller vibe when watching a tennis match? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. The more fun, the better. Let's have more fun with sports. And just to go along with our theme of February, which we will talk about, there was one more tournament. There was still another tournament to talk about, and that was Doha. And I think Doha was really just highlighted by Alcaraz. It was like, they're back, they're playing a tournament together. Everyone's expecting them to get to the finals and have another Alcaraz finals. But Jakub Mensik said, no, I'm here. Hear me roar. I am going to stop this Alcaraz final. And he did. Jakub Mensik defeated Jannik Sinner. And, it's really funny. I don't know what you thought about this moment, but for me, this is the kind of moment that the tour in general sees and might think, you know what? We've got a shot. If Jakub Mensik could do it, why can't we?
I would agree with you, Anastasia. Absolutely. Mensik played out of his mind, and he was able to play a really high level that Sinner wasn't ultimately able to beat. And that should give a little bit of hope to the tour. But let's not get too carried away, because do you know what happened a couple of days after that match? Well, first of all, Jakub Mensik lost his next match to Artifice, who was then given an absolute beatdown in the final by Carlos Alcaraz. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. You still need to beat both of them to win a tournament. You could probably win the odd match, but if you're looking for trophies, no, those two are still the ones to beat, particularly if your name is Carlos Alcaraz. And I would say let's not get too carried away, because I don't know how a fully fit Alcaraz doesn't win at the moment. So that was I was surprised. I thought Fils would give him much more of a match than he did, but Alcaraz was not messing.
Yeah. I think also though the thing really is players have to play out of their mind for the entire match in order to beat these guys. And Jakub Mensik did that against Sinner. He just played out of his mind and he won the match because he played that way the whole time. But then he couldn't do it for his next match because he probably wore himself out just playing against Sinner.
Yeah.
And we kind of saw that a little bit on Alcaraz's side of the draw too, when Karen Khachanov and Andrei Rublev gave him a run for his money. They were playing, especially in the first sets of those matches, they were playing insane tennis. But they couldn't hold on for the entire match. So in the end, Carlos Alcaraz won. But they made it hard for him. And I think that's probably what the other tennis players on the tour are going to be looking at, where it's like, we have to get fit enough where we can play our highest level against these guys the whole time, but then also be able to then go play the next match, because that was Jakub Mensik's problem. He just couldn't go play the next match against Arthur Fils. And that final against Fils and, Carlos Alcaraz, like it's so great to have Fils back on tour. Like, it's really, after being away for so long, 8 months he was away, he's already back in a final after only his third tournament. He's back in a final. But Carlos Alcaraz made him look like a junior player. He made him look like he'd never played tennis professionally ever. That match was over in 50 minutes. And there was a clip I reposted to social media where Carlos Alcaraz hits a forehand cross court off of a smash. And I was just like, well, that's it. Well, if he can do that, I don't really know what Arthur Fils can do.
No. Like, and I think Arthur Fils is someone who can come up with amazing shots as well. So that was what I was kind of expecting. I thought Alcaraz might outshot him, but I thought that he might at least, make it entertaining. But yeah, I think Carlos was warmed up by Khachanov and Rublev, and he was like, "No, I'm not doing this." And we're seeing him lock in more and more now, Alcaraz, which is making him very, very dangerous. I hope it's not too uninteresting to watch. But it's Carlos Alcaraz. Let's be honest. He'll throw something in there for the highlight reel and you'll be glad you watched it. So,
yeah.
But in terms of that certainty that Alcaraz is going to win, I think it's becoming increasingly the case that he's starting to look more and more bulletproof as he enters his peak, because he's now, he's 22 at the moment. He'll be turning 23. And I think this is where we're really going to see him start to roar and show what he's really capable of and how good he really is. So I'm interested to see how the rest of this year plays out. But yeah, Alcaraz made it very, very ordinary. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. Obviously, we won't see synchronized until Indian Wells. Let's see if we get a final, if someone can pull off an upset.
Yeah. Carlos Alcaraz is now on a win streak on outdoor hard court. Since the US Open, he's now at 30 matches. So he's approaching Jannik Sinner's indoor hard court record of 31 matches. So they're always competing, those two, always going at each other in some way. And yes, you're right. It's hard to understand who this new Carlos Alcaraz is. You kind of have to rejigger your brain a bit, because you're so used to him faltering somewhere or losing his way. But now, even when it's a tough match, he kind of finds a way through. So it's definitely going to be interesting watching this new version of Carlos Alcaraz this year. And then lastly, before we move off of Doha, I just wanted to mention Goran Ivanisevic. Coach Goran is back on tour with Arthur Fils. I am so excited. I was wondering who Goran would come back and coach. I think he had a pretty bummer kind of start as a coach after Novak. He had, first it was Elena Rybakina that didn't work out, then it was Stefano Tsitsipas that didn't really work out. Now it is Arthur Fils, and I am hoping that it does work out. I think they're still on a trial period. I was trying to read the article in The Athletic, and they only just pointed that he was with him this week. So I don't know if that's just like it's a trial period and they'll see, but I hope they stick together, and it'd be interesting to see what Goran can do to help Arthur Fils, especially as he has this sort of chronic back injury. I'm sure Goran can definitely have some pointers on that serve that can maybe help with the back.
You can always count on Goran to help with the serve, and Goran's had a few injuries in his career. He managed quite a few of them towards the end of it. It's been rough on Goran. I was literally thinking, oh, I wonder where we'll see Goran Ivanisevic pop back up as a coach. Oh, look, there he is. And that was fun to see, and I'm interested to see how he gets on with Fils if they continue this, because Fils is a lot more of a fun and explosive player than he's ever coached before. Like Djokovic and Rybakina have a reputation of being quite super disciplined, quite quiet. Stefanos Tsitsipas is his own man, and Ivanisevic found that out quite quickly. Let's just put that diplomatically. With Fils, I think it's going to be interesting because I don't think Goran's coached a player like him before, game style wise. So what he can add to that in terms of maybe some focus or things like that, I think that could be good. I definitely think Fils has the work ethic that will please Goran. So looking forward to see how that partnership goes. And look, anything that's going to help Arthur Fils fulfill his potential, I am fully behind.
Yes, we love to have him on tour. Now, just a few quick pointers before we move on to what's next. We talked a little bit about how, or at least I made the declaration that February was the best month for tennis. And it's really because of, I saw this post online and I completely agreed with it. And it's basically there's tennis in every time zone during the month of February. We've got the Middle East swing that's happening. Then we have tournaments in the US, kind of North American area. And we also then have tournaments in South America. So you can literally wake up, start in Dubai, pick up a day match in Delray, even the night matches, because for some reason, the South American tournaments, it's like midnight and they're still happening. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to sleep. I don't know what the time zone is down in South America. I need to work it out. But every time I turn on the TV at like 10, Rio is happening. And I'm like, they still have one more match to go after this. How is it 10 p.m. Eastern? But yeah, it's really crazy. And it's going to continue into next week where we still have tournaments in the Middle East. Then we have a tournament in Mexico. South America continues. You can literally just wake up and turn on Tennis Channel and just have it running, and you will get live matches all day.
I mean, it's fantastic. I think there's other periods in the calendar that are quite similar, but yeah, for me, like, Doha and Dubai start like 7, 8 a.m. And yeah, you could run until like you could basically just not sleep and watch tennis all day, like for days on end at this point. And I think it's fun because it's kind of like it's just purity of tennis. There's not same sort of stakes. You're not trying to play for a big event. Like there's obviously WT 1000 happening, but it's not Grand Slam prep. It's not anything else. Like you're just playing to rack up points and and master your craft. And yeah, you can, and there's just so much to enjoy as well because you've got the Middle East swing where all the top players are going to go. You've got your American spring swing, which is obviously you get all the atmosphere from that, and then you've got the special golden swing in South America, which is just always special to watch the crowds. By the way, I think time zone wise, it's either an hour ahead of Eastern time or on Eastern time. So they're just happy to keep playing late, and I think they kind of do that because it's so hot and humid there. It's better to play at night. You'll find that when we get to Acapulco next week as well in Mexico. So that's the situation that they've got. Also, like they kept getting pushed back by rain. Like Rio is happening this weekend, but they've had to do back-to-back semi-finals and final because the semis got washed out. And that's a relatively common occurrence for that tournament. So I'm looking forward to that. It's happening around the same time as the Delray final, I think. That Rio final. Yeah. So yeah, I'm all for it. I'm with you. I quite like being able to turn on the telly. And yeah, I can't think of another time of year that's anywhere where close to this. So if you binge watching tennis, it's just perfect. Maybe kind of when you get to kind of the bit between and the US Open, where you've got those European clay tournaments, and then the US summer swing is starting up. That can be quite fun as well. But
yeah, I think it's just really great for tennis fans, or if you're new to the sport and you're getting into the sport. Not a lot of sports can say that they have live in competition, tournaments happening pretty much all year round and sometimes all day long. Like you don't really get that in American football or anything else. Like tennis is unique in that way where you can actually get live tennis tournaments happening all day long, really, and you can watch it, you can have it in the background. Like I work to tennis, I just put it in the background and it's on there, and then I can pay attention when I want to. Lastly, before we go on to what's next, our t-shirts, ground pass t-shirts, are still on sale. The summer ones are still on sale to get rid of our inventory. And coming this week, we will start our spring swing pre-orders. So I'm going to start teasing the design on our social media. If you watched the last episode via video, you already got a sneak peek of what the shirt looks like, but I'm going to start posting on our Instagram and so on about the look of the shirt. And I'm sure you can guess what it's going to look like. We're also going to have another hat, a different color this time, so you can get a hat and a t-shirt, and it really does help support us here at Ground Pass. So please purchase one if you can. Nick, what's up next?
What's next? So the WTA is going to wind down a little bit, not completely. We've got a 500 Mexico and a 250 in Austin. Jessica Pegula is currently the top seed for Austin, so that's your next step on your US spring swing, by the way. But speaking of all that, but she's currently the top seed. I say currently because she has won Dubai and she is playing a first round match, or supposed to, against Rebecca Schramkova. If she plays it, good on her, but I don't think she will because the tournament starts Monday, and I think if they put it on Tuesday, that might be a bit of a tight turnaround. So I wouldn't expect Jessica Pegula to show up, but I could be wrong. She loves playing tennis. But Iva Jovic is playing and Venus Williams is playing. She's actually playing Ajla Tomljanovic in round one. So that's going to be a fun match given, Ajla Tomljanovic has already ticked off one Williams sister, so why not tick off the other one? And Bianca Andreescu's back as well. So that's super exciting. So some good names in that tournament. So if you could get to Austin, highly recommend, because you've got some good names in that first round and probably all the way through as well as some form players. I think Wang Junyu is also there. So that's exciting. Merida has got Jasmine Paolini as the top seed, as well as defending champion Emma Navarro. But there's also a few other fun players in there. Camila Sorio's playing, and she's actually got Janice Chen in her opening round. So for me, that's circled as like the match I want to watch if I can. Immediately, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I genuinely cannot call who's going to win that. That's going to be a real battle. And then for the men's side, we have a 500 happening in Dubai. So the men are taking over in Dubai. We've got people like Daniel Medvedev playing, off the top of my head. There you've got another 500 in Acapulco, Mexico, which I already mentioned. There, and Zverev is the top seed there. And you've got a 250 in Santiago in Chile, which is going to be the kind of the culmination of the Golden Swing. And that's, that's a little bit different for it. Again, it's kind of a sort of a fun crowd vibe and the kind of tournament you definitely don't want to lose if they get rid of 250s. I think I missed a bunch of players and information there, but that is where everything is.
Yes, I can kind of pick it up because, especially on the men's side, I think it's really interesting how they all kind of stick to their groups per se. So, for example, the Chile Open, which is part of the Golden Swing, all the players who have played the Golden Swing are just continuing on. So in Chile, you've got Francisco Cerundolo. In fact, both Cerundolo brothers are in the draw, along with Matteo Berrettini. Emilio Nava, the American, is in the draw as well. And then with Acapulco, that's kind of where all the Americans who have been on the US spring swing, they kind of dip down to Acapulco before they go to Indian Wells. So you've got, you mentioned Zverev is in there, but Casper Ruud, Francis Tiafoe, Valentin Vachereau, and Alex de Minaur are in that draw. And then in Dubai, again, all the players who just finished Doha, they just kind of go on to Dubai. So other than Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, who are taking the tournament off and then going next to Indian Wells, you've got FAA, Felix Auger-Aliassime. You've got Arthur Fils, Alexander Bublik, which, by the way, Bublik is the second seed, which I still have not, really processed that he's a top 10 player. So when I saw that Bublik was the second seed, I thought, wow, here we are, 2026 Bublik. And then finally, Jack Draper is back. Glad to see him back after he sort of dipped back in for Davis Cup qualifiers. He has a 1000 level event to defend at Indian Wells. So this would be basically his warm-up tournament before he heads over to Indian Wells. It'll be interesting to see what his level is like. And then just to let you know what the off-season players are doing, because this is now a new segment that we have, keeping you updated with what the off-season players are doing. We already mentioned Camila Osorio is going to be in Merida. Her first round match is such a tough one, but I'm so excited to watch it because that should be a really, really fun match, like you said. Then Elliot Spizzirri is actually going to be in Acapulco after he took Delray off because of his elbow. He's headed down. He actually left for Acapulco on Thursday, and he's going to be in Acapulco. He's already in the draw there, and everyone else is taking some time off. So Ethan Quinn, Colton Smith, Haley Baptiste are all taking the week off. And the next time we will see them all is at Indian Wells. I am continuing to film the players. So after the first initial episodes of off-season are done, we will have a few episodes of off-season, in-season, where I kind of catch up with all of the players on tour as they go through the US spring swing. I was watching the other day some of the footage that I had gotten while I was in Delray, and it's just so exciting. Like, I was just watching thinking, oh, this is so fun. We also added a new player. So if you don't know the Changeover podcast, the Changeover podcast is a podcast hosted by two players, one of which is Jody. And I got to sit down and interview Jody, who's a doubles player at Delray, where basically talked about his season and what he's hoping for this year. So we have a new player on the off-season roster. Super excited to add more. Anyone who wants to be part of the off-season, give me a call. I'll hook you up. But yeah, that was it, Nick. It's been a very busy February already. It continues on, have a bit of a week off before heading to the next destination. And super excited to bring you guys all along. If you're not following Ground Pass on Substack, you're missing out, because that's where I put all of the sort of like on-site stuff. That's where it lands first before it sort of filters into all of our other platforms. But Ground Pass on Site lives on Substack first.
Yeah, missing out. Go check it out. It's a great watch, and you get notifications of it when it all comes out if you subscribe. So yeah, get yourself on the Substack.
So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Ground Pass. Just a couple of things to note, because I think I never really talk about it really or say it much, but we have a Patreon, we have a YouTube membership, and we also have a Substack membership where you can pay for it. If you want to ever support Ground Pass, support off season, and so we can continue doing what we do, please consider subscribing to one of those services, whichever one is more convenient for you. Basically, all of the sort of behind the scenes, extra interviews with players, extra sort of deleted scenes of the off season will live on all three of those platforms equally. So you don't have to subscribe to all three. Just pick one and you will get all of the extra stuff. I'm also going to be adding a discount for our merch, will also be part of the membership on all of those three platforms. So consider supporting us if you love what we do here. We'll be back again next week, as always. This, I think next week is a full episode. I can't remember, Nick, but we will talk about that offline.
Meet the professionals.
It is a Meet the Professionals episode. Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It really does help with growing the podcast. And if you're listening to this on a podcast player of your choice, please give us a rating, a 5-star rating if possible. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.